Hey, how's it going, guys? It's your retro future boy, Ricky Summer here, and today I've come back in time to tell you why the reviews for Death Stranding are wrong. Well, they're not wrong as such because a legitimate review can't be wrong, it's subjective. What I really mean is this is why I disagree with most of the reviews for Death Stranding. But the video title is what it is because YouTube demands that we sensationalize everything for the sake of views.
Welcome to YouTube.
Welcome to the future. Alright, so let's get started here. What is Death Stranding? I've seen it described as a walking simulator, and you know what? Yo, that's technically correct in the sense that it is literally a simulation of walking. However, it's also a severe disservice to call it a walking simulator. To me, a walking simulator is a story that you slowly uncover by visiting locations and picking up items, and there is very little interactivity. That is not what Death Stranding is. Death Stranding is a simulation of walking while delivering packages from A to B. And somehow that combination of elements is the most satisfying gameplay loop I've experienced in a long time. So the first thing I disagree with is my perception with a lot of these big reviews is that they seem to be implying that you're constantly fighting with the controls, fighting with Norman Reedus to stay upright, whereas that's just not true at all, really, unless you've loaded up like all the cargo you can possibly handle and then some on your back so that you got this ridiculous leaning Tower of Pisa wobbling around all over the place. And even then, if you're careful, you're not going to fall over. I don't understand what they're talking about. The way the game actually works is there are three types of terrain. Blue, which is like super easy to cross, yellow, which is a little bit harder to cross, and then red, which is quite treacherous, usually rocky terrain. So the way you move is just by holding the left thumbstick forward, just like every other third-person action game in existence, and then depending on the load that you're carrying and the terrain that you're crossing and the angle that you're crossing it and how fast you're crossing it and how quickly you're turning, then you might stumble. So if you do start to lean to one side, the game will prompt you to hold the opposite trigger, to right yourself. And it's as simple as that. Sometimes you'll cross really rough terrain, like the red terrain I mentioned, or crossing a river or something like that, and the game will prompt you to hold both triggers, to grab both straps of your backpack and kind of hunker down and get through it. You walk a little bit slower, but you're really super safe. And on that point, for the most part, you can hold both triggers the whole time, and I don't think I've ever been in danger of falling over when I've done that, regardless of the terrain I'm crossing. Now, if you're a real idiot about it and you're trying to rush and you're sprinting constantly, yeah, dude, you gotta fall over. But I actually haven't fallen over once, with the exception of being ambushed by enemies and being physically knocked over from their attacks. So crossing the terrain alone is really not that difficult and not that involved, but it's just involved enough for it to be satisfying so that I'm not just walking from A to B, I'm walking from A to B in a strategic fashion. Furthermore, the way the levels are designed, the way the world is designed, is very open. There are many ways to get to your destination, and I'm not just talking about, yo, you can take this path or that path. It's an open world. You can take this path, then cut across to that path and back and do whatever you want. So you might be presented with this kind of problem. There's a really easy route with not a lot of obstacles, but there might be enemies in the way, so you got to be stealthy. Alternatively, you can climb up this mountain, which requires you to build ladders or rappel down cliffs and that sort of thing. Or you can do a combination of the two. It kind of feels like once you're on a run, it's almost a bit of a sandbox, a walking and hiking sandbox that's actually super satisfying. The game is strategic. From the moment that you take a delivery and you're choosing what to take with you, what equipment to take with you, are you going to travel really light and just use your wits and your ability to stay upright to get to where you need to go, or do you take some equipment? That's another thing. You can travel much lighter and make the journey harder for you, or you can take ladders and rope and whatnot and make those big cliff climbs easier. There's a whole bunch of different ways to play the game. And I actually played in a way that meant that I didn't really need to use ladders at all. I was just kind of careful with my cargo. I never took more than I could handle. And I got there and I never fell over and I never lost cargo. I never damaged the cargo. So in that regard, I don't get what people are talking about where they find it difficult to move Norman Reedus from point A to point B. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I have a theory, but we'll get to that in a second. So leading on from this, I see a lot of these reviews talking about how the first 10 hours of the game are tedious. So I'm ready. I more or less understand what I'm getting into here. I understand this has the potential to be quite tedious, so I'm ready. I get through the intro, through the first few cutscenes, and I'm ready. I'm like, okay, give me some tedium. I'll slog through it. We'll get to it, buddy. We'll do it together. I don't get it, dude. I'm way past the 10-hour mark, and I'm yet to experience any tedium whatsoever. It was just kind of fun. The progression of the game is quite balanced, and never did I feel like I was grinding, and never ever did I feel like I didn't have the tools to get the job done. It actually dishes out the dangers and the upgrades quite evenly. It's actually really well done in my opinion. So this is another thing I really like about the game is the progression. So the first couple runs you're for the most part on your own and they're quite long. And on paper I can understand how that might make the game feel tedious or boring to begin with. But the vistas that open up in front of you, the landscape, the beauty of it, the music that swells in the background, and you're riding off the high of this intro that's just so heavy. But those first few runs where you don't have a lot of equipment and it's just you and your feet getting to the next distribution center, it's just kind of enjoyable. There were very little dangers and it's just sort of me exploring the world and figuring out, okay, this is actually a strategic experience. I have multiple different ways to get to where I need to go. It was a learning experience and it was quite satisfying in my opinion. Then you start to get equipment that makes your runs easier and a lot easier, that gives you more options. Then you get a bike. And suddenly it's like, well, shit, everything I've been doing up to this point is now trivial. So I can just run missions left and right, we're good to go. Then it takes you to the next area and they take that bike away. And you might think, well, shit, now I'm starting all over again. But no, my dude, after one run, they give you a different piece of equipment that I'm not going to spoil. They give you a different piece of equipment that is more of a side grade to the bike. So they've taken one advantage away and given you a different advantage that has a different set of rules attached to it. So you're learning something new, you're trying something new. Then, once you've done a few runs with that new piece of equipment, they give you the bike back. So you've got options. Then you're building all these structures and you're changing the world in front of you and you're making everything easier for yourself. So honestly, I just don't understand where these reviewers are coming from with comments like, the first 10 hours are tedious and boring. And a slog. I don't get it. But I've got a theory as to why we're hearing such things about Death Stranding. Think about the review process. So these big publications get the game early, a week, maybe 2 weeks early, and they've got a deadline to finish the game and write the review. So these guys might be playing it all day non-stop, or even worse, maybe they're playing it in their own time, staying up all night because they've got to get it finished by a certain day. They're not sitting back, smelling the roses, enjoying the experience. So they're loading up on too much cargo and taking the shortest route that isn't the smartest route. They're not playing strategically like they should, like the game demands. So of course, yeah, they're stumbling over, they're fighting with the controls, Norman Reedus is flailing all over the place. Then the first 10 hours of the game was probably all played in one sitting. Can you imagine? 10 hours of running cargo straight while you've got this deadline breathing down your neck? Buddy, of course, that's gonna feel like a slog for sure. And I almost hate to say this because it feels like I'm making excuses for the game, and I hate it when people make excuses such as, oh, well, the game's really fun when you play with friends. Yeah, of course, every game is fun when you play with friends, or you're just not playing it right. But, oh, I've become one of these people. I hate it. I think a lot of these reviewers just aren't playing the game right. It's a slow, methodical, strategic experience. That's what the game is. It's a strategic walking simulator with a bleak, melancholy world that demands to be taken in. Sometimes you need to sit back and exist within this world and inhabit the skin of Norman Reedus and his techno fetus and just go, what up? And look, I don't want to sandbag you here. There are things about the game that I don't enjoy. There's one thing in particular that keeps jumping out at me, and that's the constant exposition dump. Whenever there's an important cutscene or a main story mission, you'll get this exposition dump. And what bothers me about it is I'm sitting there going, Dude, Norman Reedus knows this. He lives within this world. He 100% already knows what you're telling him. I understand you're reiterating in such great detail for the sake of me, the player, who doesn't know this shit, but it just, it's jarring. It's jarring and it kind of breaks the fourth wall, and I think it could have been handled more elegantly than it is. But that's kind of it. That's my biggest complaint. It's not that big of a deal, but it just keeps jumping out at me. In conclusion, I'm really enjoying this game. I'm playing it just like 2 hours every night, and I'm not feeling any tedium. I love the progression. I feel it's really well balanced, and I'm getting new equipment, new tools to tackle the obstacles all the time, and it feels fresh. Things are moving forward, and I want to go back and run some of the optional missions with my more advanced equipment to get it done quicker. I love the world. The world is so bleak and heavy and depressing, but there's a glimmer of hope. The game is all about human connection, and right now for me, that's a big thing. Human connection is so important, and we're becoming more and more isolated. We're pushing people away. We're isolating ourselves on purpose. And this game says no. That's not what the human experience is about. It's about connecting with people. And I love it. That's a really beautiful message that I think a lot of people need to hear. This game, in my opinion, is art. We've had this debate for years. Are video games art? Can video games be art? Yes, absolutely they can be. Are most video games art? No, I don't think so. Not in my opinion. This game, however, this game is a piece of art. Dude, I don't even like Kojima that much. The only other Kojima game I've played is Metal Gear Solid 5, and I didn't even finish it because I was so goddamn confused. I didn't even like Norman Reedus. I find him weird looking. He's uncomfortable to look at. I was not on the hype train for this game at all, but I love it. It's becoming one of my favorite games of all time. So, do I recommend Death Stranding? You're goddamn right I do. A lot of these reviewers seem shit scared to recommend the game, or it's like they're walking on eggshells and they don't want to say, no, I hate it, it's horrible. Dude, it's okay to have an opinion. Share it. Especially if you're going to release a review, give us your honest opinion. That's what reviews are, opinions. We want to hear it. So yeah, in a lot of these reviews, people are saying, it's a good game, but it's not for everyone. No shit, dog. That's like every piece of media ever made. Nothing is for everyone. Some people are not gonna like this game. But if what I've said intrigues you, buddy, give it a chance. I absolutely recommend it. I'm loving it. That's it. That's all I want to say. I'm just like, I'm freaking out over here. So let me know what you think in the comments down below, guys. Have you been playing Death Stranding? What do you think about it? I know some people have talked about the problem with the reviews for Death Stranding already. The problem with the reviews is not that they're so divisive. That's life, dog. You know? The problem with the reviews, as I said, is I just don't think the reviewers were given the chance to enjoy the game. Just because of the nature of games journalism. Simple as that. Alright guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. Taste the game, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you next time. Ricky Summer, out.